the new edition of Metaphysical Meltdown with me, Mary Beckman, and the lovely Marti Melville. I am so happy to be here with her today. And we are going to be talking about channeling for writing. I think it's going to be fascinating to hear how Marti does this. She teaches classes on it. She's a paranormal historical fiction writer. She's a screenwriter, a children's book author. She's a spiritual writing coach. That's kind of what we're talking about today, because she's going to get us into the realm of listening to our guidance as we write. And folks, that is what I'm going to be doing. So I'm going to tell you right now that this podcast is slowing down here. I have a few more people coming up, and then that is precisely what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be working on that book. And if you are a personal friend of mine, you know how long it's been gestating. Maybe that's why my belly's growing. Not sure. Could be what I've been eating, but truly, it's probably the book. I wish, right? So she owns a publishing company called, you say, Marti?
Dose Blant Publishing. I think it's Welsh.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you want me to tell you what it means?
I do. And I just want to welcome you. I'm so happy to have you today. So just tell us about you.
Okay. Well, I started writing, it's been, I think it was 2009. I had 2 boys to play 2 different wars, was up all night long, couldn't sleep, and started studying the moon. And as I studied the moon, I started feeling impressed to write the story of a pirate. So I did some research on him, and he's a real guy. He's a bad guy. Nobody knows much about him. So it opened doors for me to get a little bit creative. So as I started writing and I had an outline and had the whole thing planned out like they teach you in school, I realized very soon that that's not how these books come. You know this, Mary, too, because you've written several books. So the story started writing itself. I found myself in the dark writing and talking to my characters out loud, which, of course, I'm thinking, I'm crazy. What is going on here? And realized that really the story was being given to me. I really was just a tool to write it all down. Once I accepted that role, instead of going, well, I'm making this up and this is my story and I'm the author, the information just flowed. And there would be times that I would be writing so fast that I couldn't keep up with the information that was coming. And then all of a sudden it would just shut. It was like somebody had opened up a trap door and things were just flooding in, and then suddenly shut it and it turned off. And so as the information came, I felt like these floodgates were opened and this information was just pouring into my, I guess you could call it my imagination. It felt more real than just a make-believe thing. So I would write it all down, and just as suddenly as the doors had opened and the information came, it shut off. And I remember sitting this multiple times, looking up at the sky going, really? Is that it? I sat here and wrote all this down and now you're going to stop? So it was a little bit of a wake-up call that really I'm not in control of the story. And over the course of 10 years, I've written 7 books for myself. I've written probably the same number of books for other people as a ghostwriter. And all of those, with no exceptions, have been channeled, meaning that the channel's open and the information's given, and then it's closed when we're done. So that's the process I teach in my classes, is how to channel so that you can literally throw out your outlines and just be open to whatever the message is that is meant to come to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so has each time you've written a book, has the guidance been a different being?
Good question. Yeah, actually, that's true. In the middle of book 2, let's see, between book 2 and book 3, so book 2 in my Paranormal Pirate series, that is Silver Moon, called Silver Moon, and book 3 is Onyx Rising. So in the middle of those 2, and that was going gangbusters. I was like so excited to get into book 3 because things had gone completely different than I planned, and I was excited to learn about the character, Thomas Bourne, and he's a real guy too. He's not a make-believe guy. He's a real guy. And sorry, my daughter chimed through. Did you just see that?
It's okay. It was just a small thing. I just asked them to pull the ship up slightly.
Okay, sorry. Edit this, Tom. Another edit. Okay. back to it. All right. So, um, in between those two books, all of a sudden I started. Well, actually, let me back up. I had written a screenplay with my writing partner Kevin Dutois, and we were in the middle of writing the script. He got a little bit disinterested in it and had other projects come through, so he stepped out. I finished the script, but I didn't really like how it went, and immediately a book came through about the same thing. So Sullivan House was born, which is really a oh gosh, it's you know what? Now she's FaceTiming me. I'm so sorry, Mary.
That's okay.
My kids do this all the time.
That's
All
all
right,
right.
back up. So Sullivan House came through, and the information that came from that was also channeled because it's about Savannah,
Mm-hmm.
and there's real ghosts in there. They're all bad guys, of course. So it's kind of creepy. The house is fiction, the main character is fiction, just like in my pirate one. But that whole thing was channeled. So came through from Patrick, who's the main character. And that was a really different experience. But again, the floodgates opened, the information came through. The minute it was done, it was over. And I sat back and went, whoa. I know there's another book behind it because I can feel it, like you said, it kind of gestates and bubbles.
Yes.
So I can feel that starting. The hardest book I have ever written were the children's books because that's less channeling and more. I try and write it about what the kids want me to write about. So they give me a topic and off I go to the races. And I've decided I'm not very imaginative. I cannot make anything up.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's been the hardest thing. Yeah.
Maybe a little kid guide. You could ask for a little kid
I
guide
need
to come
something like that. Yeah, I need some little kid spirits to come down and sit with me for a while. Holy cow.
That's
Yeah.
that's awesome. And I know that you travel around to different like ghost conferences and things.
Right.
I was able to be at one with you the other day, and we're going to go to another one here pretty soon.
Pretty
What
soon.
do you like about those?
Well, because I write in the paranormal field, I guess you could say, I really like being around that stuff. I've always been interested in the paranormal and in the supernatural, and it's not frightening to me. It's just another dimension that I feel like, it's like space. We haven't explored it all the way yet. So there's a lot of information to be learned. My heart is with history, and so the only way you can know history is really to kind of visit it. Whether it's through channeling or whether it's doing research or whether it's going to these conferences where you can learn about how to connect, with spirits on the other side, which I'm not real good at doing, I will be honest, but I do believe there's a little bit of that happens with the channeling. I don't know who Patrick really is, but man, he had a bad life, poor guy. Poor bugger. So when that came through, that was an interesting piece. But I spent a lot of time in Savannah, so it felt very comfortable to go there. So
Well,
anyway,
the thing is, I noticed about you is you do a lot of different things.
yes,
And anything that you want to do, I think you can. So as soon as you open up and say, you know what, I really want to see my guides
right.
and hear my guides and see those spirits, you're going to do it. You really are, because your brain is,
Yeah,
you're a figure it outer kind of person.
you're sweet. I'm an Aquarius. Enough said.
We both are.
Pisces
Boy, I
rising.
tell
Holy
you,
cow.
there's a
I know.
lot of
High five.
a lot of Aquarius energy right now.
I know, right? So no, that's really true. And when I say I don't really see people from history, I'm thinking, gosh, I'd love to sit down with Lincoln and I'd love to sit down, with some of these historical figures that are, so prominent in what happened. I'd love to sit down with a Civil War soldier and just talk to them and say, tell me what it was really like, some of this stuff. But there definitely are loved ones on the other side. There are angels, guides, all those people that have passed that are willing to be with us, and we know they're there. We can sense them. One of the things that we talked about last night was basically how to recognize when you are being inspired. And I believe that channeling as a writer is all about receiving that kind of information. And sometimes, we sit down and we question it. Like, am I making this up? Is this for real? How do I know? That kind of thing. And they've been identified, all of these gifts have been identified as clairs. I won't get into what those are, but everybody has experienced kind of a knowing, for example, the claircognizance, they call that, where you can walk into a room and you can sense or feel what's going on, good, bad, happy, someone's upset, that kind of goes into a different kind of clair. But those kinds of feelings, when you start paying attention to them, more and more comes. And that happens with channeling as a writer. You start paying attention to the messages, sometimes the coincidences that aren't coincidences. And I believe I'm a big believer in writing everything down and journaling. So
And that you're not thinking this, you're not bringing it in, it just pops in. And then I understood that about a month ago, I kept seeing the ruby, and I knew that's not my frequency at all. And I kept pushing it away, and it was my new guide. So
I think really, truly, and they've proven this. This is a scientific thing. When our minds are busy,
yes,
focusing on something else, that's when the spiritual and the metaphysical can come through. So a lot of times, that twilight sleep that we have at 3 a.m., we're in and out of consciousness, but we're really not thinking about anything. And all of a sudden you see someone standing in your room, or you hear a voice. I've heard pounding on the wall. I've heard my voice called out, those kinds of things. Or like driving. Driving is probably one of the best ways to channel, because your mind is focused on the road, sometimes mindlessly focused on the road, like you get home and you don't know how you got there. But that's also when the information comes through, because you're busy thinking about something else. So now that opportunity to open up to the metaphysical part of your brain, it's open and it's receiving. And that's why a lot of us will be driving and all of a sudden you have these brilliant thoughts, quote unquote thoughts. And I've had to pull off freeways to write stuff down. Like for example, I had just finished the first book, which is Midnight Omen, and was starting into Silver Moon, and I was driving up the 405 freeway in California, heard the words to a hanging, for an 18th century hanging, and I knew it was different. It was different verbiage. It came through almost sing-songy, and I thought, this is weird. So of course I pulled off the freeway and pulled out my pen and wrote everything down that I heard. And when I got home that afternoon, I researched it. It was verbatim. So that was definitely given to me. Those kinds of things happen all the time. And it's a validation when you can look up stuff like that and get validation that what you received is factual. Gives you chills. It's uncanny, really. But you got to do it.
What about your children's books? How were you inspired for those?
Uh, I don't know if this was inspired or selfishness. I just want to leave something that's a nice legacy for my grandkids. I have a lot of grandkids and I have really neat children, and I just wanted to leave something behind that was a little bit more than just, a keepsake, like an object. So, I asked my oldest granddaughter, Isabel, what she wanted her story about, and I thought, I've got 11 granddaughters and 2 grandsons. So I thought, well, I'm going to end up with nothing but princesses and unicorns. None of the girls want that. Everybody wants something. Like, I've got one granddaughter that wants to be on space, another one wants to be president. So it's fun writing. And I thought, I'm just going to write a story for each of them. They come up a little bit with the story, and then I try and embellish it a little bit. But the first book, when Izzy's book came out, I showed it to her, and well, I read it to her, and she was like, I said, "Do you like that?" And she's like, "Not so much."
Oh my gosh.
She goes, "No." And I'm like, what don't you like?" And she says, "Well, it needs Pegasus." And I'm thinking, what the heck is a Pegasus? Like, I had no idea what a Pegasus was. Anyway, so she helped me with that. We got the Pegasus in there, and then now the story's perfect.
All right.
So it's just that. It's just fun for the kids. But it's some of those books are on the AR reading list in California, or they were. So that's kind of a compliment. I always felt pretty good about that.
That's awesome. And what are your children's books called?
It's the Ballyhoo books. So my grandchildren, I have to explain that title. My grandchildren, when I worked as a nurse in the ER, I would come home after graveyard shift at 7 a.m. Well, it was about 8, but anyway, I'd walk in the door and go, "Hoo hoo, I'm home." And so Isabel named me Grandma Hoo Hoo. Well, that's fine when you're private in your house, but when you go out in public and somebody calls you Hoo Hoo, that's a little bit of a problem. So my daughter said, there is no way you can be hoo-hoo in a book because nobody's going to buy it for their child. So we added Belly on the front of it and just started writing. So it's really about me and each one of my grandkids. But the goal is to have children have a desire to use their imagination to create adventure. So there's a treasure box that Grandma Ballyhoo has in her house, and they open the treasure chest lid, and in there is something different for each one of the grandkids, and off they go on an adventure. And then as they solve the problems, as they travel through this adventure, the advisement from Grandma Ballyhoo, who is always use your imagination. And so that's how they solve problems, is using their imagination. So that kind of encourages a spiritual aspect too. Like my goal is to get kids away from using somebody else's imagination on like an iPad or a game board and get them into listening to their own creative thoughts or inspiration or channeling, whatever it is. Yeah.
And many of the little ones these days are absolutely mind-blowingly psychic and have so
Yeah.
many abilities that we can only dream about.
Right. Right. Like we talked about last night, out of the mind of or mouths of babes. I mean, kids will talk all the time about their imaginary friends. They'll talk about, um, things that they've experienced or thought or that kind of thing. And it's real. It's, I don't ever question if somebody points out the window and says, "Hey, there's a little girl over there by the tree." If I can't see her, that doesn't mean the little girl's not there. So I've learned to believe just about everything, which makes me a little bit gullible in some areas, but I've also learned to listen to my instinct, which is another Claire we talked about. So when you have that gut feeling about something, I don't blow that off very often anymore. When I do blow it off, I get in trouble. I think everybody feels
Yes.
that. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Bless you.
pardon me. Gosh, it's all the wonderful blooming trees. I'm really happy for my lilac, but it's getting me. But yes, the I see something thing has gotten us in trouble a lot, hasn't it? I see something, I fear, I hear
Yeah.
something, I feel
Yeah.
something. And as we move into this new energy, everybody's going to be coming into that sort of thing. So,
Right.
excited to have that. Well, what I thought was great about your speech last night, so everybody, she gave a really awesome speech at the Lou J. Free Psychic Showcase that we are a part of on Tuesday every week in Federal Way, the only way. It is at 7 to 9-ish. Last night ran long because Marty had a lot to say and everybody had a lot to comment. Really, there were lots of comments, which I love, that kind of thing,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
interaction between
A lot of
people.
interaction.
We had
Mhm.
an awesome young one there last night, and any age folks are welcome. We have them from 0 years old to 90 years old. It's just everybody, which I love. And so she talked about, how do you know when you're getting psychic information, the way you call it, tells. Could you kind of just
Right.
give a little overview of that? You kind of
Sure.
talked a bit about it, but
Yeah, so all of us have, and this is important again for writers. So I'm kind of focusing on writing because there seems to be a big interest, especially among psychics and mediums and those who are involved with helping other people in a spiritual manner. A good way to get your information out is through writing. So I'm focusing on that for that reason. But one of the things that I have learned for myself that I think is not unique to me is to pay attention to the signs that come before. So, one of the things that I do is I try and pay attention to the signals that come through just before maybe information arrives. And it's not unique to me. Everybody has this. For example, one of the examples I used last night is when somebody who suffers from seizure disorder gets ready to have a seizure, there's something that called an aura that happens before. So their vision will change. They might get dizzy. They'll sometimes hear noises or buzzing or that kind of thing. And then the migraine hits. And so it's an actual thing, and it's proven, or the seizure will hit. It's proven medically, and it's recognized by the medical field as being a realistic symptom of something that is going to happen, just like arm pain for sometimes is a signal of heart problems. So that happens on a metaphysical level too. when somebody is, say, for instance, starting to feel like they're going to receive some kind of a message, they'll get a tell. My tells are itchy palms, my nose itches, sometimes I get a little bit dizzy. There will be just, or I'll get this gut feeling like, oh shoot, here comes something, I better pull off the freeway, right? So when those tells happen and everybody's different, it's important that we pay attention to those kinds of things, because that's when the messages come. And I'm a firm believer that if we don't accept the messages that come to us, they're going to go to somebody else who will. And what a missed opportunity that would be, right? So I think one of the biggest challenges we have is to actually pay attention to those things and be willing to say, yeah, I heard this and it came to my mind and I wrote it down.
Yes.
And I'm just the tool that received it from some other higher source. Because a lot of people want to laugh at that. To say you're channeling information, whether it's for writing, whether it's for reading, whether it's for counseling someone, whether it's for just your own personal life. For example, driving in the car, everybody's heard this, where all of a sudden you feel this compelling need to stop the car, or you hear somebody shout at you, stop, and there's nobody else in the car. That's saved a lot of lives.
Yes.
And nobody questions that. Nobody says, oh yeah, you're crazy because you're hearing this and it just happened to be that you saved your life. People don't question that. But for some reason, people will question when you say, I had a vision or I heard this, And I would like to see society get to the point where they can say, oh yeah, this is a channeled writer. This is a channeled medium. This is a channeled artist. These things come from inspiration. And one of the examples I use a lot of times with my clients is I used to live in Dana Point on the beach. And so we would go sit at the beach, my husband, my daughter, and I, and whoever else was there. And we'd look at this gorgeous sunset going down. I was always looking for the green flash, that the pirates had. Twice. But we would sit there and watch the sun go below the horizon. And as we sat there, my husband would feel inspired to write poetry. My daughter would feel inspired to paint the scene that she saw, and I would feel inspired to write about pirates. Now, all of that came from exactly the same image, but we were inspired differently. So none of us are wrong. All of us are receiving information. We're channeling it from somewhere, and it all produces something that is beautiful and beneficial to society and to the public. So I'm not sure where I'm going with that. I think this is just part of accepting these tells that come to us. I don't know, what are some of your tells, Mary? I know you have tells because you're channeling all the time.
Well, what's funny is nobody picked up on geometric shapes and light language as something you see last night. I noticed nobody said that as a tell. That's one of mine.
I think we mentioned patterns, but I think when you get into this more and you're accepting more of this kinds of download that's coming to you, you start seeing beyond just the simple things and start getting into deeper tells. I mean, it's really just about educating yourself as to what is speaking to you, and so that you can learn more and you can learn more. And so for you, it's less about, walking in and sensing a room as it is watching for the signals, whether it's light or sound or people or whatever. And you're very tuned to that. But somebody who's just beginning on this pathway, for them, it's paying attention to, okay, what am I feeling now? Okay, do I hear anything? You got to learn to walk before you can run, kind of thing.
So I was at the Ascetti Ranch this last weekend, and I stood in a Stargate twice. Once in the middle of the labyrinth and once out in the circle. Actually, more than likely, probably 3 times. So the final time I stood there for a while thinking, holy cow, is that heavy? I mean, so when I'm in the presence of a soul, like a deceased soul, my chest feels heavy. We talked about that last night.
Yeah.
So the difference between being with a soul or somebody with maybe malintent, we see those too. But the other day it was, wow, I am in the most powerful place I've ever been in my entire life.
Right.
And then I stepped out of it and I thought to myself, I wonder if I stood in there long enough. So you said the message will be given to somebody else. But I asked just a second and I said, did I get that download? And they said, yes, you're good to go. But that light language stuff that I've been seeing in the air and the patterns hasn't been for more than a few months. So that's a new thing. And then you had so much information, I kind of got sidetracked and didn't throw that out there. Bet you people in that audience are seeing that too, because most people at Luz are pretty, they're pretty out there. But so what are some of the things that people, what are some of those clairs? Because we still have a few minutes. Sorry, everybody. We had a little glitch in the matrix there. This is crazy energy today. So Marti is going to catch back up talking about the different types of tells, as she calls it. She's going to describe some of the clairs.
Okay. So, I believe that things happen for a reason. So we're gonna slip this in just so that we can get a little more detail about the clairs, which I think is really important because everybody has a clair. Everybody has at least one or two, and it's interesting because sometimes we don't recognize what those are. So I'm going to go through them and list them, and I will give you an example of each one and try and associate a quote unquote tell with that so that we can each identify what belongs to us. So the first clair that most people are familiar with is called clairvoyance, and that is the ability to see. So a lot of us, when we say we're seeing things, people kind of give you that look and go, yeah, she's crazy. I've had that a lot. But you're not crazy, because what you're seeing is through spiritual eyes. So for myself, I will close my eyes a lot and I will pay attention to the images or the flashes that come into my visual field. And a lot of times that flash can even be a remote viewing experience, which is something that is actually a skill and not like a psychic gift. Everybody can remote view. So the remote viewing thing is a whole nother topic, but it does fit into this clair. It also belongs to people that are able to see ghosts. I know, Mary, you see spirits on the other side. So if you're able to visualize and see a spirit or the shape of a spirit or the outline or the, shadow or something that kind of passes through your peripheral vision, that's clairvoyance.
Right.
Patterns is another one. So patterns of numbers, like I saw again today, 555. I see 1111 all the time, 333. I saw 1010, I think yesterday. So those patterns, when I see them, that actually is a tell that something is coming. Now the clairvoyant gift might be that I actually see a spirit standing there, or I see a vision of some kind. But the 333, which is the tell for me to listen, will be something that I would use to pay attention. And you mentioned earlier about light, seeing light.
Light language I've been seeing, hanging out in the air. One time I saw somebody's name and then I'll see like grid patterns and different stuff. I haven't been doing that for very long, but usually it's just, I see people just like I see you, a little bit lighter,
I think that's an amazing gift. That's one I hope to be able to hone.
Oh, you'll get it.
Yeah. So I will see, a lot of times I will see in my mind the events that happen in the book. I literally know what it feels like. That's a different clair. What it smells like, that's another clair. But I know what it looks like in a particular like scene or location or whatever. That's can be clairvoyance. So that's one clair. Another clair is called clairaudience, and that's hearing. So a lot of us have heard our names spoken. We'll be in the house, it'll be quiet, you'll be doing something, and all of a sudden you hear your name called out. I have it all the time. And the voice sounds like my father. It's actually not my dad. I think it's my grandpa, because my dad lives in another state. So there's no way it's dad. But I'll answer, and it's very clear. It's not something I've made up. I have occasionally heard pounding on my wall, and it's 5 very loud raps on the wall, very rapid, loud raps that I'm usually awake, but it's even like a twilight, not really twilight sleep, because it's like I'm just waking up, but I'll hear this pounding, and it's usually an alert that someone in my household is in distress and to pay attention. So we'll hear that. People that will hear on a psychic level or will hear channeling information will do that, and it will sound a little bit like when you're reading a book to yourself. You don't really say the words out loud as you read, but you can hear the story and the sentence and the paragraphs as you read each word in your head. And I did this before to you, so we'll find out which one hooks itself into your brain. But they call it, what do they call it? Earworms.
Earworm. Yeah.
Earworms. Yeah. So that's basically a song that you don't want to hear in your head. And it keeps playing over and over and over in your head until you hear something else. We've all had that happen. That clairaudience can be in that form. And for me, that's generally how it happens. So for example, I was driving on the 405 going north to LA and heard, the way you would hear a song in your head, the words to an 18th century hanging. And so it was pretty profound because the language was different than what I normally speak. I knew it was coming from somewhere else. I had not researched this aspect at all because I wasn't at that point in my book. So this was kind of it was an alert, really. And I pulled off the side of the off-ramp and wrote down everything that I was hearing verbatim as if I was taking dictation. Went about my business that day, and when I went home that night, I decided I probably ought to look it up and make sure I know what I'm doing. So I did some research, and it took me some time to do this, but I actually found an 18th century hanging, and the key words and the phraseology was verbatim.
Wow, that is really something.
Yeah. So that got my attention. I knew it was a channeling thing. In fact, that one event probably was the catalyst that made me realize I'm not writing this book. All I'm doing is recording it. Yeah. And so that was kind of a scary thought, but it was a nice thought because I could release it to whomever was writing. So that's clairaudience. Another is sentence. I think your sentence.
Clairsentience, I think, or I'm not sure how you say that.
Sentience, I think that is correct. And
yeah, the empath stuff.
The empath stuff. Okay, so that clairsentience is very connected to clairvoyance. Mm-hmm. In that you can literally feel the environment. So all of us have done this where we've walked into a room, a couple maybe has been fighting, and you can feel the tension in the room. People say that all the time. I feel the tension in the room. So that is the clair that you're using to sense that. It's also something that an empath will feel like on steroids on the grand scale. They can be around people and feel what they're feeling and sense what they're feeling and almost bring it onto themselves. So that's the kind of, that's another kind of clair that a lot of people are very familiar with. It's a common clair to have. Attached to that is clair, the touch one. What is that called? I'm sorry I don't have these memorized. I should, but my mind's gone kind of brain dead.
Clairtangency.
Okay, clairtangency is touch. So that's another feeling, but it's a different kind. Instead of being an emotional feeling, clairtangency is actual touch. Mm-hmm. And I do this a lot. So when I do my history research, I'll go to an old home or a castle, or, I've done research in the Caribbean, all over the Caribbean. I've done research in London, England. I've done research in many, many cemeteries around the United States and Europe, and I'll literally touch the tombstones, mm-hmm. or I'll touch the rock wall, or I've got a lot of antiques in, like this is a very old chair from the 1800s. So when we bought this, I literally touched the chair and put my hands on the table to feel the energy. People will do this with crystals. So there's a lot of people who will hold crystals, and they talk about the vibration, and it's a real thing. They use crystals in radios. When they first started doing radios, they used crystals in ultrasounds in the medical field. Watches, they were, crystal faces on the watches. So all of those things are real because crystals conduct energy. They help bring it through into whatever medium it needs to be touching. And so that's why we can feel the vibration.
Right.
And I talked about this before. One of my favorite memes is a little girl who has her hand on her heart and her other hand is on a tree. She's got her eyes closed and she is literally feeling the soul of that tree. So plants, water, there are things that we can touch that we literally can feel vibration for. That is clairtendency.
Yes.
Another one is what's the smell one called?
Clairalience.
Clairalience. Okay, clairalience is, I always just say the smell clair, the hearing clair. I'm so bad. I should probably know all this, but anyway. So clairalience is smell. A lot of us will walk, going about our business, go in a room, and all of a sudden we smell grandma's perfume. That happened to me when my third son was a baby. He was laying on the bed and I was getting him dressed after a bath, and all of a sudden I could smell a mixture of Jergens lotion, that old lotion, and Clorox cleanser, which was my grandmother's smell. She would always clean things with Clorox and then put Jergens lotion in. It's a very distinct smell. It very much belongs to her, and I hadn't smelled it for years. And all of a sudden I smelled this and I'm like going, oh my gosh, grandma's here. So I stepped back away from the bed. He was on a big bed and he just laid there and played it. And I really think he was looking at her the way he was looking, but I knew she was there. We'll do this sometimes. Cigar or pipe smoke is common with people. They'll smell that, and that's usually, or peppermints.
Yes.
Peppermints and tobacco is very common for like a grandfather.
Yes.
So if you have a scent that is familiar to you, that would be clairalience. One experience I had is, I lived in this house in North Carolina. Isle of Palms was the center, the landing point for Hurricane Hugo, which is a Category 5 hurricane that hit I think it was the early 2000s. And our house was on Isle of Palms, and I know it was haunted. I had seen some spirits that had resided there before. A little unsettling at first, but once I knew what was going on, I wasn't quite as unsettled. One was a small person, the other was large. So there's my clairvoyance. And I used the other clairs to kind of determine, are these guys bad or are they not? I felt fine about it. But in the kitchen, there was one place that I just had the creeps. Every time I walked by the wall, I was like, yikes, this is not a good place. And there was a circumference of about maybe 12 inches in diameter that always smelled like vomit. And so I would walk by, sometimes I smelled nothing, but I would catch this smell of vomit. And I finally did some research because I couldn't get rid of it, scrubbed it, put those Sensies there, did all this air spray and everything, nothing worked. So I asked the neighbor the story of the house and the story of what happened during the hurricane, and come to find out, after the waters had receded from Hurricane Hugo, the snakes came in, and the snakes are cottonmouths out there, and so they were biting people, and a lot more people died of snake bites than drowning, she said. And I'm almost positive that was the case with the little one that was in my house. Yeah. So, and that's a symptom, of somebody that's poisoned, they'll vomit.
Sure.
So I think that's what that was. That's my experience with Claire. There's been a couple of others, but that's one that I know I have on occasion. Claire gustance, that is taste. And so sometimes people will have a metallic taste in their mouth, or they'll taste strawberries or chocolate or something associated with somebody they know. That's common. Bile, they'll taste bile or feel nauseous, those kinds of things. So the taste is also a little less common, but it is also something that happens quite frequently. Have I missed any, Claire's?
No, that's awesome. But it reminded me of the last week I came down the hall first thing in the morning. I just woke up and I smelled bacon, and we're vegetarian. So, so I smelled bacon. And I saw my dad clear as day standing out here in the kitchen, full apparition. And I said, yeah, can you hold on just a minute? So I got something to drink, and I got my pad and paper, which is always out there. And he gave me a message.
See?
And it was really awesome.
So that, okay, that segues into the next part of what I want to say, which is when you start identifying what your clairs are, and there obviously was a very clear clairalience that came through for you, and then you saw them. So there's the two of them working together, clairvoyance, clairalience. And so when you have these clairs come through, you want to pay attention to what happens just prior to the event, because that's your tell.
Yes.
Right? So my tells, which are kind of the warning signs that, hey, something's coming, is I will get, sometimes I get chills down my arms, but it's not like goosebump chills, like, oh, that gave me chills. This is a different feeling. It's like electricity.
Right.
I get it on the back of my head, but it's not the whole back of my head. It'll be one-sided. And I actually, whichever side I get it on, I'll listen. So there's that. Sometimes I get dizzy. I do get itchy palms, so I'll sit here and scratch my palms when something's coming through. But you want to pay attention, and I would recommend making a list of all of the clairs that you're familiar with or that happen to you that you notice. Make a list of what happens just prior to that, because that's your tell, and it will happen over and over again if you pay attention. Then here comes the clair, whatever it is that's going to hit you. And after that, you're going to do exactly what Mary did, which is you want to have a notepad or a piece of paper and ask why.
Yeah.
Why did your dad come? Well, he came to give you a message, right?
He did. It was a beautiful message and one I needed to hear. And by the way, I just saw your guide walk in too.
Which one?
A very special one that we both know.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. She's always here. I love
Yeah.
her. So one of the things that's important is when you're asking why, is to do exactly what Mary, you suggest, and that's write it down, because sometimes these things don't make any sense. And you won't know exactly why you're writing these down, but you again end up getting a journal. Here's my journal. I have to bend over and get it. This is my journal. Oh yeah.
Oh, wow.
I have two of this very same kind, and it stays right here where I've always got it and can reach for it. And I write anything that comes that I think is important, because I could be channeling another story.
Right.
You know, and I've had stories that come in between other stories. So for example, Sullivan House came in between, the two Deja Vu Chronicles books. I think we talked about that. Yeah. But had I not written that down and taken notes on what was coming to me, I would have missed a great supernatural kind of scary ghost story. So always write it down and make sure that, when you recognize the tell, that you associate a clair with it, and then you put the why behind it. And you're going to start understanding some of what your calling is and what your purpose here, especially if you are writing. You're going to understand, what is it I'm supposed to do? What am I supposed to do with these books? What am I supposed to do with the stories and the thoughts and, everything that comes to me? You've written books, so I know you've experienced that, Mary.
But the weird thing, we didn't say this before, but I just thought of it the other day. I was looking at Facebook, and somebody that I just barely know lost her grandfather, and in seconds he was standing in front of me. And I wrote down his message, and I messengered her, and I said, you really don't know me, but your grandpa wants to talk to you. And we had a big, long conversation, and grandpa was a very solid, he was such a strong spirit. Yeah. Coming through with all kinds of stuff she needed to know. So you never know what you're writing. You really don't.
You really don't. And it'll make no sense to you, but if it's not meant for you, whoever it's meant to be for, that will happen. Because again, when you were writing and we're channeling as writers, we receive the information, we simply record it, and then we release it. That's our job, to be the tool and when that happens, really magic happens. People's lives are changed. And we're all at different levels of being able to channel information. I look at you and I'm like, I want to be like Mary one day, where I can do all of the things and see all of the things and have all of the experiences you have. And I know there are people who are going, oh gosh, I'd really like to write 7 books someday, and that'll happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so we'll all do that. We're just in different places. Yeah. So we're here to help one another. But the big piece of that is recognizing your skills and the messages and because you get stuff different than I get stuff.
We all certainly do.
Everybody's stuff. It's just like the story you told about this last weekend. You were seeing things and your friend was feeling things. And so the combined gifts that you had created a beautiful experience. And that's why we're all here. is to do that kind of thing together.
Very good.
Yeah.
So we have a couple more minutes. Do you have the books to hold up? Got any books?
I don't have them in my hand. I'm sorry. But you can go to my website, which is www.martimelville, Marti, Melville, Melville, one word.com. And the books are there. You can go to Dose Blant Publishing, which is D as in David, O-C, Charlie, E, Echo, B, Bravo, Lant. I've done that a few times. Publishing.com, one word, or just doseblant.com. It's the same thing. And the books are available there. I am happy to do any consultation or working with people one-on-one. Kevin and I still ghostwrite screenplays, and I ghostwrite books for people that are interested. My fees vary depending upon people's budgets and what they need done. So we're not WGA, which fortunately keeps our fees low, thank heavens. So and we've won several Hollywood awards for what we've done. So I'm really proud of our work, and I'm honored to be able to work with someone like Kevin on the screenplays. That's really nice. And the books are just they keep coming. I look at this and feel like I am just someone that is to receive this information. And whatever's meant to happen with the books will happen. It's in God's hands. So fortunately, because of that attitude, they've been very successful. And I'm honored to be a part of that process.
And you have some pirate events and things coming up.
Yes. I'm going to be in Westport at the Rusty Scuppers Pirate Days. Myself and several others. Teresa Carroll, who does paranormal investigations, she's doing a ghost hunt at the Tokeland Hotel that weekend. I'll be there signing books, dressed in my pirate gear. And Barnacle Bill, who writes books about pirates, he's a character. He is seriously better than Johnny Depp. I'm telling you, this guy's amazing. He's also a musician, big band player. So he's going to be the MC. He'll be there. And then Austin Highsmith Garces, who is an actress in The Dolphin's Tale, she'll be there signing books. And then Ren Cummins, who does steampunk sci-fi fantasy, and he's got airship pirates. Like, this guy's amazing. He's going to be there. So it's going to be a busy weekend. We're excited about it.
That sounds really great. Do you remember the date? Because you've got a lot going on.
It is the weekend of June 29th or 28th through the 30th.
Cool.
So it'll be that Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
And you and I are going to go to the Ghosties at the Port Gamble.
I know. I can hardly wait. That'll be so fun.
That's going to be fun. So hopefully we can have you back, because there's a lot about you. That's why I love talking to you. There's so many things about Marti that's interesting.
Thank you.
So we are going to wrap it up, everybody. Thank you so much for hanging out with us this Sunday. The Rock and I say goodbye to you, and we love you. We've got a few more folks left to interview before the podcast goes on a short little hiatus while the book comes in. And I just thank you so much for being with us. One love to everybody. Namaste.
Bye-bye. Namaste.